What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Behind the Glass Sports Podcast. Happy Friday. Glad you made it. Hopefully your day is going well. Ours is, even though we had to get up kind of early. And of course, as we do these early morning streams, we're struggling, but we want to thank you for tuning in and listening, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or listening on YouTube, or whether you're finding us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Pocket Cast,
You said Anchor
Overcast,
twice.
Radio. I mean, there's so many casts. I forget it after a while. I mean, there's no excuse for you not to listen to us. If you want to follow us, of course, Stephen Priest Jr., myself, Brandon Stoll, the other end. If you want to follow us on Twitter, at Brandon_Stoll for Brandon, at Stephen Priest Jr. for myself. Don't disrespect me with that VEN nonsense. I will block you. Happy Friday, though.
Just realized my Twitter handle isn't on the main screen.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to that. It just disappeared. Yeah.
That's a first world problem. But we want to thank you for listening today, tuning in today, watching today, however you're getting it. Oh, real quickly, I got to say, Danke fürs Zuhören. I hope I said that right. We have listeners in Germany and the UK, so shout out to those in Germany. I tried to say thank you for listening in German. If I completely butchered that, forgive me. Even if you accidentally hit play trying to find your Wiener Schnitzel podcast, thank you for accidentally hitting play. We appreciate it. No, real shout out to you guys. And if you're American listening in Germany, well, I'm sorry for that last bit. That was just pointless. But regardless, thank you. That's universal. We appreciate it. Huge show today. LeBron James, is he a top 5 player of all time? One Hall of Famer or future Hall of Famer says no, which is just dumb. We'll get into that. Who's going to be here for the Denver Broncos in the next 2 years? Interesting conversation. Is this window a 2-year window? We know John Elway's contract is very short term. Von Miller could possibly have an team option within the next year or two. Who's going to be here? Who's not going to be here? We'll discuss that. And of course, we got to get some Nuggets talk in. How can the Denver Nuggets win a championship within the next 1 to 3 years? Somebody in Brandon's DMs, or excuse me, YouTube comments really, says he might have an idea. So we're going to go over all of that. Huge show today, jam-packed. Brandon, where do you want to start first? What should we unpack first?
Let's go over that comment because I thought it was interesting.
Okay.
Do you have it up?
I do have it up, yes.
All right, so yeah, go ahead and just read his first comment because it gets a little crazy. But I think the idea of it is basically one of very, very few ways that the Nuggets can actually win something in the future.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing, and shout out to Kennard Williams if you're watching or listening, whatever the case. If you come across this, shout out to you. This came from one of Brandon's videos, and if you want to check out Brandon's gaming channel, Beasto Sports, I encourage you to check that out. It was from his Denver Nuggets 2K20 rebuild, and Kennard Williams kind of went over how the Nuggets could possibly win a championship within the next 1 to 3 years. And, of course, this is all, best case scenario stuff here, right? I mean, everything has to go right for the Nuggets for this to happen. But first, Kennard says Bol must start. Now, if you'll remember, Bol is the Nuggets draft pick. They kind of stole him. He was a first round pick, right? Kind of mid round, kind of like MPJ style, if I'm correct, right? Or did they get him in the second round? I believe they might have gotten him in the second round.
Bol was the second round.
Okay, so they get Bol, obviously a player who's like 7 foot plus, can shoot, handle. However, he's got some injury concerns. He does, have a very frail frame for a guy that big. But here's Kennard's reasoning. First off, Bol must start either at center, moving Nikola to the power forward spot, or vice versa, meaning Bol at the 4, playing a pseudo Kevin Durant role. Interesting. Number 2. MPJ must start for the Nuggets to compete for a championship, not second round, but a finals appearance. The Nuggets must commit to a big 3 of Jokic, Jamal Murray, and MPJ. So that's an interesting one right there. He goes on to cite that a front court lineup of Jokic, Bol, MPJ would give them one of the best groups of multifaceted bigs in the NBA. This would immediately cure the Nuggets' biggest deficiency on defense, uncontested layups, blow-bys in the paint, able to protect the rim. We'll dissect that. I kind of disagree with him there. He talks about the shooting of 1, 3, 4, and 5. Those positions could have the potential to shoot better from 37% from three, 60 to 75 from the field. That might
That
be a stretch too,
that's a
I think.
stretch. I would say 50 to
Um,
60.
yeah, and of course with all this, so you're thinking, okay, Bol starting, Nikola Jokic, MPJ starting. What's happening to Gary Harris? What's happening to Will Barton? Well, he touches on that. He goes on to say those moves by themselves, the ones I just talked about, make the Nuggets, excuse me, better than they are today, even at the expense of Mason Plumlee, Torrey Craig, and even Paul Millsap. But the trade for Will Barton is key. Regardless of whether he is packaged with future firsts to get a star like Bradley Beal or not, Barton must go because he represents an impediment to the lineup proposed above, and he kind of impedes MPJ starting. Barton has established himself as a potential trade piece for a team like the Knicks or a lotto team trying to make a jump in the East, the weak East, he cites, allows Denver to keep Gary Harris, who is a better 3-and-D role player than Barton. End game scenario he'd like to see for the Nuggets: if Milwaukee not only loses again in the playoffs, but LeBron wins MVP, chances are they lose Giannis in 2021 as well. So here's the trade he proposes for the Nuggets: Will Barton, Monte Morris, a 2021st to the Knicks, and Denver receives James Wiseman or Anthony Edwards and Dennis Smith Jr. Now, for those who don't know, James Wiseman and Anthony Edwards are highly touted prospects coming out in this coming
This
draft,
upcoming
correct?
draft, which would
Okay.
mean that the Knicks would have to get very lucky in the lottery and get a
Right.
I would say top 3 pick for one of those guys, because Edwards is going to go number 1. Unless Golden State gets number 1, I think they take Wiseman. But they're 1, 2, or 3.
And then he goes on to say Denver would offer Edwards/Wiseman and Bowl for 2021 through 2025 first rounders to Milwaukee, and Denver receives Giannis Antetokounmpo. And so he goes on to say the potential Nuggets lineup would be Jokic, Giannis, MPJ, Gary Harris, Jamal Murray. Okay, there's a lot to get to there, a
And
lot to
that would
break
be a
down.
1-year rental for Giannis.
1-year rental, like Kawhi Leonard to Toronto. A lot to unpack. Now, obviously, you know what? Listen, I speak for any Nuggets fan and Kennard as well. If this were to happen, sign me the heck up. However, there's a lot that we're banking on, a lot of best case scenario situations. So let's just start from the top. Bol must start either moving Nikola to power forward and Bol playing center, or vice versa, keeping Nikola at the 5, Bol at the 4. I don't like the idea of moving Nikola to the power forward spot and having Bol play at the 5. Now, granted, the 5 is kind of a dying position. I just think Bol is so frail down there, and we don't know if he can develop a frame to where he can put on muscle. Because remember, it can go one of two ways. Kevin Durant has always been a frail guy, and he really hasn't been able to bulk up. Anthony Davis, when he came in, was very frail, but he's been able to bulk up. Now, he's a bigger dude.
Mm-hmm.
So which way is Bol's body going to go? Which way is he going to cater to? I just don't like the idea of him moving to the 5. Now, he does have the length, obviously. He's a 7-foot plus guy. But I mean, if he's, trying to guard a guy like a Nikola, or, a Nurkic, or guys that are just loads down there. And Enes Kanter, I think, could even push Bol around down there. I just don't like that situation. What do you think about his proposal of either moving Nikola to power forward and Bol at 5, or keeping it as we would hope it would be, or as I would hope it would be?
Yeah, for me, it doesn't really matter as much, just because, like you said, I mean, the league is turning into more of a positionless league.
That's true.
Um, I think I, I think the concern is just matchups. So you would have to, whoever the coach is, if they decide to keep Malone or not, whatever happens with that, most likely Malone, he would have to make sure that game by game he knows who each of them are guarding. Because you go into a game like against Milwaukee, who has Giannis starting at the 4, well, who the hell is going to guard Giannis? And I guess they're kind of at that point right now. Who's going to guard Giannis? You'd have to probably switch MPJ on him, and then one of them's going to be on Middleton. One of them's going to be on whoever they're starting at 2. That doesn't really make sense. Like, that's a matchup nightmare. And I mean that's obviously very difficult in general to figure out how you're going to guard Giannis, right? Because he's technically starts at the 4. And they start 3 smaller guys next to him with the center. So it's not like you can just throw, it's not like if you're playing, say, the Lakers, and you can throw maybe Bol on Anthony Davis, Jokic on their 4, have MPJ on LeBron, and, whatever. You have your 2 guards on their 2 guards. Like, it matches up a little bit better. So that's the issue is night in, night out. You got to figure out, okay, is Bol going to cover the 4 on the opposing team or the 5? Is Jokic going to cover the 5 or the 4? So for me, it's if the other team has a guy who can step outside, it probably should be Bol, just because I think he's slightly quicker and I think he can recover faster because of his length. Because of his blocking ability, he can recover faster. But the other part of it is, well, if you have Jokic guarding the 4 and that guy blows by Jokic, you have Bol behind Jokic to where he can get a block. So, and MPJ, I guess, back there too, right? Because again, all 3 of them are about 7 feet. 6'10" is MPJ, 7 feet, right? Is Jokic. So it's the I guess what you lack in on-ball defense, you can recover because of your length with MPJ and either Jokic or Bol that can come over for a weak side help, and get a block or whatever. So you kind of get help from back there, but still it's tough. And again, we don't know how good Bol is going to be. He looks good in the G League. Well, in college, he averaged 21 points a game, 9.6 rebounds, 2.7 blocks, shooting 56% from the field. And he shot 52% from 3. Again, that was in college, though. And then right now in the G League, he's averaging 14, 10, 5. He's 14 points. This says 10 assists. I'm going to assume it means 10 rebounds. 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.3 steals, 1 block per game, while shooting 45% from downtown. So, again, he's playing really well in the G League. So it might be able to transition into the NBA, but the question is his speed and his ability to keep up with NBA players. I mean, that's probably the biggest concern.
Yeah, and let's just skip the second part. MPJ must start for the Nuggets to compete for a championship. I think we both agree with that. I don't think that's one that we have to kind of dissect too much. I think we talked about it on the last podcast. I mean, if this team wants to reach where they want to go, MPJ has to play a focal point in that. So I think we're right there with Kennard on that. Going to the defense, though, part of this, and he said while it would give Denver one of the best groups, if not the best, of multifaceted bigs in the NBA, I agree with that. It's a unique group. Your 3, your wing is 6'10". You have Nikola, who's just a unicorn in his own right, and then you bring a guy in Bol who's like 7'1", 7'2", or whatever his height is, has the length, can shoot, handle. It's like a couple inches taller, similar to Kevin Durant. I'm not calling him Kevin Durant, but it's that similar type of skill set of a big man who can handle and is like a guard, but he's a 7-footer.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, and he can shoot. I don't think he says it will immediately cure the Nuggets' biggest deficiency on D, uncontested layups and blow-bys in the paint.
I think it would immediately be just because of their length alone. I mean, we saw when they had Jeremy Grant and MPJ on the floor together. Immediately you could tell there was a difference because of their length. So if you add a Bol into that, then yes, it would, but it would also hurt you with your, at least on the outside, it would hurt you because those guys can't guard guys on the perimeter. They just can't.
Well, and that's why you usually don't get blow-bys in the paint. You get blow-bys on the perimeter to the paint. And
right, so the way to beat Denver would be to spread them out.
Right. So, I mean, if you're playing a team like Denver, yeah, that's what you want to do. Like if you're Houston, you want to spread them out. Mm-hmm. And I just don't believe that either of those guys, if they're switched out on a pick and roll on a guard, we've seen MPJ, his biggest issue right now, or during the season was his inability to play defense effectively. And we saw Michael Malone. I mean, it affected his minutes. So I don't know if that's immediately going to cure the blow-bys or anything like that. Nikola, we obviously know, is not the slightest of foot type of guy. He's not very agile. So it's easy for him to get blown by. Bol, I don't know. Maybe with his length, it's easier for him. He can recover, so there's a little bit more leeway for him to be able to get blown by, and then he can recover with all that length that he has. I don't know if it immediately cures that. I can give you the uncontested layups. Now, obviously, those guys can cover a lot of ground with how athletic, specifically Bol and MPJ, just how athletic they are. And, with the height, yes, uncontested layups, there shouldn't be able to be that much. But it also depends on, where they're attacking from the floor. If they get switched on, if
Right.
Nikola is getting switched on to a guard on a pick and roll and he gets blown by, and Bol and MPJ are guarding on the weak side of the perimeter, are they going to have enough time to get over there and contest a layup? I don't know. But the part I will agree with is the ability to protect the rim. Yes, with guys like that, your ability to protect the rim should be much better. So there's a few things in the defensive side that I don't necessarily agree with, specifically the blow-bys. And I believe he meant from the perimeter to the paint because, like I said, you don't get a lot of blow-bys in the paint.
Right.
But it's an interesting lineup for sure in terms of the height. Let's move to the offensive side of things. He said the offensive spots, the one position, 3, 4, and 5 would have the potential to shoot better than 37% from three, 60 to 75% from the field on length alone that few teams could match or defend, and most importantly, 80% from the free throw line, which by itself will make Denver a contender. I don't know what the Nuggets were shooting in this season before everything got stopped at the 3-point line, but I don't think as a team they were shooting 37%. I'll have to double check that.
I doubt it.
But what are your thoughts on that?
If
Like 60 to
those
75% from the field, that's high.
those three, so I was wrong on Bobo's G League stats. It's actually in 19 minutes a game he averaged. Let's see, he averaged 12 points, 5.8 rebounds, 2.3 blocks in just 19 minutes per game. In just 8 games, he was 100% from the free throw line, and he shot 36.4% from three. So he can get there. He can shoot between 36 and 38% from three. Right? So if he could do that, I don't know what Jokic is shooting. We know MPJ can probably hit 40% from three eventually. Like, he can get there. He could be a 50, 40, 90 type of player.
Nikola was very low from three this year. He was at 31%.
Right, but he was higher last year, right?
Yes. And then Michael Porter was at 42%, but that's obviously, he's taken less. And I mean, he barely had one, 2 attempts a game, and he's nearly making 1.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think that's still more real for him, right? I think MPJ could be a 50, 40, 90 type of player down the line, where he's shooting 50% from the field, 40% from three, and 90% from the free throw line. So I think his shooting ability is insane. So those three, I think the one that you're concerned about, I guess, is Jokic. And worst case scenario, he's probably shooting 30% from three.
So I guess my question for Kennard then would be, so 1, 3, 4, and 5 would have potential to shoot better than 30. So he's just combining Jamal, MPJ, and all those guys. I mean, even Jamal, I want to say Jamal was down on 3 this year too.
Yeah,
he was at 35% this year.
So you're talking about 2%.
I guess if you're averaging all those guys, then sure. Okay, the 4 spots, then yeah, I think 37% might be pretty reasonable. So okay, I can see that. But 60 to 75% from the field? I mean, what were these guys shooting from the field? I mean, Jokic
there's no way.
Down there.
There's
Jokic
no
is
way.
At 52, Jamal was at 45. Let's see, MPJ was at 50. So yeah, I don't know about 60 to 75%, but maybe high 50s, maybe mid to high 50s.
Yeah, I would say if you can get between 50 and 60% from the field, and you're shooting 35 to 40% from three, yeah, that's great numbers, at least from those 4. But again, my concern is, okay, well, in this situation, you have Gary Harris at the 2. I mean, I don't know. Like, that's a hard one because as great as Gary is defensively, and they need that, he just something happened. It's like the monsters from freaking Looney Tunes came down and took his offensive powers.
Yep.
Like there, it's he misses everything. It's not just threes. It's floaters. It's those stupid floaters that he takes that just clanks off the back of the rim every time. It's mid-range shot. It's everything. He misses everything. So
I'm curious with Gary how much of this is a confidence thing, but how much of it is related to just how much time he's missed. Because I mean, if you look at his seasons, he's never played a full season. Now, obviously, he wasn't a starter every year. So I mean, his first year he's playing 55 games. His second year he's playing 76. His third year is playing 57. Then 17-18 he's playing 67. Then last year he plays 57, and then 56 this year. I'm not sure how much he missed. I don't know what the Nuggets were at before we. I think they were 60+ game. Let's see. When they stopped the season, they're 43-22, so 65 games
so
that
he's
they
already
played right there.
missed
So like
9.
what, 9 games or something like that? So 57 and what did I say? 65.
Oh, then
So
he's
I
missed
mean,
8 games.
oh no, 56. Excuse me.
Okay,
And
yeah,
they were
9.
at 65. So 9 games. Yeah. So I wonder with Gary, and each year he's gotten progressively worse offensively. His peak year was 17-18, which I believe was the last year. Or was that the first year of Mike Malone? I believe that's Malone's
No,
first year.
it's
Was it? I'm
16,
pretty sure it was. Yeah,
17
because last year
was.
they made the second round. Yeah, that was Malone's first year. That was the year that they barely missed out. I'm pretty sure on the playoffs against Minnesota, that play-in game essentially.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I mean, he went from 14-9, so 15 points a game in 16-17, to 17 and a half, 18 points if you want to round it up in 17-18. Then last year he was at 13 points, and this year he was at 10.4. Now, obviously, he didn't miss as many games as he did last year to this point, but I wonder how much of it's just his confidence is gone, and his confidence is gone is because he's injured so often and he just can't seem to find that rhythm. And then in that same token, now you have to factor in the emergence of Jokic, you have to factor the emergence of Jamal Murray. So now he's getting inherently less shots. You have a guy like Will Barton who's going to take more shots than him. I think it's a lot of factors at play here as to why Gary's not able to get back to what he was, at least in that 17-18 season.
Yeah, for me, I mean, just look at his percentages. I mean, the points per game will lower because he's getting less touches, and you got guys like Jokic, Jamal, Barton taking the scoring load.
Oh, that's a good point.
But so that's fine. I understand if his points per game is going down. That's understandable. But your percentages should not. And if anything, should be going higher because you're getting less shots. And you should be taking better shots because those 3 guys are opening up shots for you. And when you watch the games, he's getting wide open looks. Those floaters, they're wide open. The threes that he gets, too. They're wide open. Yeah. And so in his rookie year, he shot 30% from the field and 20% from 3. So that's not good. His second year, shot 47 from the field, shot 35 from 3. Okay, much better. His third year was his best. 50% from the field, 42% from 3. That's ridiculously good. Then it just went downhill from there. He shot 48% from the field and 39% from 3 in 2017-2018 when he averaged 17 a game. So that's still solid, lower than the year before, but that's okay. It's not much lower. But then it goes down to 42% from the field and 33 from 3. And then this year it's a little bit lower, 42, because he was shooting like 4.24 a year ago, and 3.39 from 3. And then this year it's 42 and 33. So it's gone progressively lower. His percentages have gone lower since the 2016-2017 season each year. And maybe he's just going, he's just going to be a 42-33 guy. But that's not good enough for your shooting guard to be a terrible shooter. Um, it's just that's the frustrating part, and that's with getting better shots. Like each year, he's getting better shots, better and better and better shots because Jokic is getting better, Jamal is getting better, and Will is taking a lot of shots. I don't want to say he's getting better, but he's taking a lot of shots. So, and that's with Paul Millsap taking shots too. So that's the problem is that if you're getting less shots and other guys around you are getting better and playing better and being efficient, there's no reason for you to not be. And that's the frustrating part. And we just watch the games. I mean, they're wide open shots. And it's just he's missing everything. So I don't think it's guys around him affecting his game. It's just the injuries maybe, but he's always been like that. In his best year shooting, he played 57 games. And that was a year where he missed like a 20-game stretch. So I don't know if you can really make that excuse either because in his best shooting year, he missed 30 games. So I don't know. I don't know what the deal is, but I just think that he had a couple of great years and maybe he was just getting layups and dunks. And he wasn't shooting as many threes. I don't know, but from what I'm looking at, he's shooting just as many threes.
Yeah, to me, it's just a guy that just has no confidence right now, and I just think it's just multiple factors. I think the injuries are a big part of it. You know, it's hard to establish a consistent rhythm when you're constantly missing games, and you know when he is back out there and he's getting those open looks, he just needs to see it go through the bucket, and it's just not happening for him.
Yeah.
And I just think it's just a vicious cycle for Gary. And unfortunately, hopefully it turns around. I don't know if it will, but for the Nuggets' sake, you got to hope so. But if we move on in Kennard's, I guess, proposal in terms of how the Nuggets could potentially win a championship in the next 1 to 3 years, he mentions the expense of Mason Plumlee, Torrey Craig, Paul Millsap, but really the key move is to trade Will Barton. And he talks about, you know, if you can package him for a guy like Bradley Beal, if you can trade him to the Knicks for a lottery pick, you know, with a couple other guys. I just don't know. I like Will Barton, but I don't know if he's going to net you a Bradley Beal. And we talked about this. I can't remember if this was on the pod the other day or if this was just, you know, us talking off air. If I'm Washington and the Nuggets want Bradley Beal, I'm not starting a conversation. I'm not picking up the phone unless part of this deal includes Jamal Murray or MPJ. That's the only way I'm taking this call. I'm not taking your Gary Harris. I'm not taking your Monte Morris. I'm not taking Will Barton. And even if you package all three, I'm not taking any of them together as well. So I just think the likelihood that you're going to be able to get a star like a Bradley Beal, let alone a lottery pick, is just very, very low.
It depends what other teams are offering. So if there's a report out there where the Brooklyn Nets are interested, well, what the hell are the Brooklyn Nets going to offer? You got Karis LeVert
in who? In Barton?
And Beal, Bradley Beal.
Okay.
So from Washington's perspective, you got Brooklyn interested, you probably got the Lakers interested, and you got the Nuggets interested.
Yeah.
So if the Brooklyn Nets are interested, they could give you Spencer Dinwiddie.
Who's a nice player though?
Well, Barton's a nice player.
Right.
Monte Morris is a nice player.
I'd probably take Spencer Dinwiddie over Monte. But I get what you're saying. Spencer Dinwiddie is not like leaps and bounds ahead of these guys if he is at all.
Right. And same with Karis LeVert. I mean, Karis LeVert had a crazy game, but is he and does Brooklyn even want to get rid of both of those guys?
Right.
So it depends. It depends on what Brooklyn offers. It depends what the Lakers can offer. Crap. So they're probably out. So I would say it's between Brooklyn and Denver, unless a team like Oklahoma City tries for no reason at all. I don't get why Oklahoma City would try. So it's just that's I guess the big question is if Brooklyn is willing to offer, say, Jared Allen, who's who's a solid center, and he looks like he could be, eventually maybe make an all-star team. Like he's a pretty solid player. So if you package him, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Karis LeVert, and you throw in a couple firsts, that's
that
probably
way better than the Nuggets deal.
That's better than the Nuggets not offering Jamal, MPJ, Jokic, whatever, right? At that point, the Nuggets would have to offer Jamal, Will, and probably Gary.
See, I think that right there. Now, if the Nuggets came to Washington and was like, hey, Jamal, Gary, and Will, or Jamal, Will, and Monte, probably not Monte. You don't want to trade both of your point guards, but something with that, with like Jamal and Will. Okay, now I'm a little bit more interested. Obviously, crazy things happen. We're not GM, so we don't know what could happen. Bradley Beal could get irritated and want to force his way out, and hell, he could say the only team I want to go to is the Denver Nuggets, and you're kind of force their hand. I just don't see a situation in which you could get a guy like that unless it's free agency, and even then, we've seen what the Nuggets' luck is in free agency. And trying to get a Bradley Beal, I just don't know if that's the likelihood, or how likely that can happen.
Right, and it's because mainly Washington just signed him to a 4-year deal, 3-year extension.
And Bradley's already come out and said that he likes being the guy. He feels like they're building around him, and he wants to take on that challenge. And obviously, that could be lip service, and things could change in a year if they continue to just be trash. But I just don't foresee. I just don't see it happening. I just don't.
If it's gonna happen, it's probably gonna be, I would say, the off season or the season of the 22-23 season.
Yeah.
Or maybe the 21-22 season. No, it would probably be 22-23. Because look, a lot has to happen with that team, and if he wants to be the main guy there, and if he wants them to build around him, he probably needs to give him a couple years. So, if he, if say the rest of this season doesn't happen, but they play the 2021 season, right? Then. And they're terrible, and they don't build around him at all. They make some bad draft picks, whatever. And then the 21-22 season comes around, and they're still struggling. At that point in, February 2022, when the trade deadline's coming, he might be able to force his way out. But at that point, I mean, he probably wants to join the Lakers, the Nets, someone like that who is either has already won a championship or is the favorites. And I don't see Denver being favorites at that point unless Jamal and MPJ both take that steps. And then at that point, the Nuggets would not trade Jamal or MPJ. So, I don't know. Look, the Raptors had to get rid of DeMar DeRozan. And at that time, it was a little crazy because you're getting rid of a guy who is 28, right in the middle of his prime, who is playing really well, and who's an all-star, and you trade him for a 1-year rental. Now at the end of the day, it was worth it because they won, but at the time when they made that trade, it was completely crazy because you're getting rid of a guy who you could have had for the next 5-7 years of being an all-star player and building around him and Pascal and Kyle Lowry. Instead, you trade him for a 1-year rental, and most likely 99% chance Kawhi wouldn't have come back. I mean, he didn't come back, and they won a championship. So that was completely insane. So
I don't necessarily think so because I mean they traded a star. DeRozan is a star.
Yeah, but there was no way Kawhi was going to stay. But there was no way Kawhi was going to stay. DeMar was attached to that city.
So desperate to win.
Yeah, but what if they wouldn't have won? Say they lost in the second round.
And they wouldn't have worked out, but they won. So
right, but at the time when they made that trade, did you really think they were going to beat Golden State?
No. And
that's my point.
that's an asterisk. That championship is an asterisk because we all know if Golden State was healthy, there's
right.
no way in hell Toronto beats them.
The short time when KD was out there and when he came back, he was killing them.
Yeah.
There was and they were winning that game. And did in the game that KD got hurt, I think they won, right? They were able to hold on.
I'm not sure because that was in Toronto that he did that.
Okay.
And then I think Clay got hurt the next game.
Yeah.
He tore his ACL, I believe. Even if they don't lose Clay, I think that's a close series, and it's probably a coin flip at that point. But if Golden State was firing on all cylinders, I mean, let's not kid ourselves here. Like that Golden State team, that would have been a 5-game series right there.
Right. And imagine if DeMarcus Cousins was healthy.
Right.
Like when that trade happened, when Kawhi went to Toronto, at that point, Golden State had a healthy Curry, Clay, KD, Draymond, and DeMarcus Cousins. They all 5 were healthy when that trade was made. So if you're looking at it, and again, at the time, everyone thought they were completely insane. And it's not because they didn't think they could get to the finals. There was no way in hell that they would be able to win the finals against that team. And the only way they could is if 3 of the 5 guys got hurt. And 3 of the 5 guys got hurt. And they could not play. So they just got completely insanely lucky. And they were able to win. But if those guys were healthy and they would have lost, I mean, they barely beat Philly in a game 7. What if they lost to Philly? What if that shot didn't go down and they lost to Philly? Then you just traded a guy who would have stayed with your team for 10 years, and you got rid of him, an all-star player, and you traded him away for a 1-year rental. You lose. That guy leaves, and you have nothing. And the only good thing that probably would have come out of it was, okay, well, Pascal Siakam turned into an all-star. Well, great. Yeah. You could have had Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, and Pascal Siakam for 5 to 7 years at playing all-star level. Good job, guys.
It's the ultimate gamble, but it paid off, and that's the only universe we know. Maybe the parallel universe they just discovered, the Toronto Raptors, completely got swept.
Right, but for the Nuggets, and going back to Nuggets, in that way, you're getting rid of a guy in Jamal Murray for Bradley Beal, who at that point will have maybe 2 years on his contract, maybe 1.
Yeah, and I don't know how old Bradley is, but I mean he's getting probably, I would say he's in high 20s, early 30s. So
right, your window was shortened.
Yeah, and you're not trading Jamal. I don't think
he's 26.
A star yet. He's kind of an ascending player who could be a star, like a lower level star, like your Bradley Beal. Right. But you're trading that guy for a star who I think can help, but it's not like what Toronto did, trading a star for a top 5, top 3 player. That's completely different stuff right there.
Right.
And speaking of that, let's just hop to it. I mean, he also, Kennard Williams, who suggested this, proposal of how the Nuggets could possibly win a championship in the next 1 to 3 years. He obviously mentioned the Barton, Monte Morris 2020 first-round pick to the Knicks for Wiseman, Anthony Edwards, and Dennis Smith Jr. Then in 2021, Denver offers one of those picks, Edwards or Wiseman, assuming that the Knicks get, obviously they'll probably be a lottery team, but that they get one of those guys. Trading one of those prospects in Bol 2021 through 2025 first rounders, so all those first round picks to Milwaukee, and you receive Giannis. I mean, hey, I would love it, but there's just
so you're getting rid of 4 first round picks, right?
Yeah,
is what he said. But you can't get rid of first round picks in back-to-back years. So it would be,
I think it's 5 first round, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25.
Okay, so then that would mean that's 5 first round picks over the next decade, because you can't trade back-to-back first round picks. So in 2030, they're going to have our pick. By that point, Jokic is going to be 35, 36. Jamal's going to be 32.
Yeah, this is.
And what if they leave?
They're locked in still as well.
Right. So if they leave in free agency, say Bradley Beal leaves, then Jokic leaves, then Jamal leaves, then you're saying, well, crap, we don't have any first round picks for the next 5 years. We don't have. I mean, they would, but with Denver's luck, the 1 year that they're completely crap and they would get the number 1 overall pick, it probably would be Washington's at that point, right?
I'm
So
curious to
no,
see what Toronto gave up for Kawhi Leonard.
I don't think they gave up that many first round picks. They might have given up 1 or 2, but I don't think the big thing was DeMar DeRozan, and they got rid of someone else because they got Danny Green as well.
Right. So San
Um,
Antonio traded Kawhi Leonard, Danny Green to Toronto for DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and
Right.
a protected 2019 first round pick. So I mean that's all it took to get Kawhi.
that's not that much,
And yeah, well,
but
and at
but
the
it's a
time you
1
have
year
to
rental.
remember, yeah, at the time it was a 1 year rental. Kawhi was coming off of an injury,
He wasn't playing.
and yeah, exactly.
He
So
refused
you
to
weren't
play.
really. Giannis is the top 3 player in the game right now,
And he's
okay,
playing,
it's different. Let's
and
take
he's
a
not
little bit
asking
more than
out.
that. Yeah, but I don't know if I'm willing, to give 5 first round picks and a prospect. That's just as a small to mid market team in the NBA. That's just a nightmare scenario because if one thing goes wrong, you set your franchise back not like 2 to 5 years, like a decade at least.
Yeah,
I just don't know if I could do that.
I don't know. Okay, if you win a championship out of it, at the end of the day, is it all right?
Well, sure, but I mean, there's just so much here, and I love what Kennard is doing here. And as a Nuggets fan, let me just preface, like, of course, if all this happened, then sure, hell yeah, let's do it. But it's just so peak scenario. Everything has to fall in
Right.
place, all the right things.
Just like
Like, what
Toronto.
if you just get some of these things? What if Bol just turns into something good, MPJ turns into something good? Then okay, then you just have a solid team right there of Jokic, MPJ. If
Hmm.
MPJ turns into the guy, and Bol is a solid contributor, and Jamal Murray is more consistent, and Jokic is still Jokic, well, then you don't need to
You can
trade,
win with just that group.
Will Barton.
Yeah.
You don't need to trade 17 first round picks and everyone's firstborn son, and for Giannis for 6 months.
Well, let me
You don't
bring
need
up
to do
another
that.
scenario. And
Okay.
I think when we were at the Nuggets game earlier this season, we were talking about it.
Yeah.
Let's say, and again, this is extremely hypothetical. I'm not saying it's going to happen so that people don't freak out.
Right.
Let's say that, let's scratch this current season. So let's say in the 2020-21 season, right, this upcoming season, the Nuggets get to the Western Conference Finals and they lose to, let's say they lose to the Lakers. They beat the Clippers, or they beat the Lakers and they lose to the Clippers, vice versa. Whatever. And they lose in a close series. It's six games, 7 games, whatever you want to say. And they had a chance. There was an opportunity, but LeBron or Kawhi was just too much for them, right? And they were able to win it. And then that team went on to win a championship. Okay, 21-22 season comes around. Same thing happens. You lose in the Western Conference Finals, again, to one of those teams, and it took LeBron or Kawhi to go crazy on them. Meanwhile, on the East, Milwaukee has either lost 2 straight finals or hasn't even made it to the finals. And now Giannis is starting to say, okay, I'm going to test free agency. So you have a Western Conference team and the Nuggets who's lost in the conference finals back-to-back years. And let's say Jamal is an all-star, and PJ is an all-star, and Jokic is an all-star. All 3 of them have made an all-star team within the last 2 years.
So we're in 2022-23 season going.
We're in the 2022 offseason. But yeah, we're going into the 2022-23 offseason. And Giannis is a free agent. And the Denver Nuggets have the money. They have let Paul Millsap go. And they don't have to pay MPJ yet. They let Gary go.
No,
And basically on their roster, you have Jamal and Jokic. And you have MPJ on his rookie deal still.
he wouldn't be. So
Well,
he
would be up though. And what I mean by that is you can use right, but you would be able to sign Giannis first, then sign MPJ, and you'd be able to afford it. But if you were to sign Giannis or sign MPJ first to a max deal, then you wouldn't be able to sign Giannis. So what I'm saying is, in that free agency class, right? And remember that MPJ would be restricted. So you can match any deal and you could go over the tax. And the Nuggets are willing to go over the tax at that point. So if you have Jamal, and again, you would have to let everyone else go. So everyone that's on the team, you would have to trade them, let them go in free agency, whatever. So basically on the roster, just like what the Miami Heat did at one point, they had Dwayne Wade, LeBron, and Chris Bosh, and Udonis Haslem, and that was their roster. Well, in this situation, the Nuggets would have Jamal and Jokic on their roster. That's it. They would sign Giannis, and they would bring back MPJ. In that scenario, though, would that be enticing for Giannis to go to a core of those three guys, and say you have Bol Bol, because he's probably making like $2 million a year. So you have those guys, and Denver comes knocking on Giannis's door and saying, look, we've been to two straight conference finals, and we were a game or two away from making it to the NBA finals and beating one of those LA teams. And meanwhile, Giannis hasn't been able to get there, or he's lost to those teams. Well, Is there a chance that he comes to Denver?
If in that scenario, you're talking Jokic has already established himself as a 2-time All-Star now.
Well, he would be
a 2-time All-Star now. So I mean, if
he would be a 4-time All-Star.
3-4 times. So he's been to All-Star games. He's a regular All-Star.
And he's been top 5 in the MVP race.
Okay, Jamal Murray's made it to 1. I don't know if that happens, but in this scenario, I'll go with it. Okay, Jamal's made it to an All-Star game.
And same with MPJ.
MPJ.
Or at least close.
Then sure. I mean, yes, if you're Giannis, like, how could that not be enticing to you? It's a team that's right smack dab in their prime, because by that time, I believe Jokic will be 27, Jamal will be 25, Michael Porter will be 24. So everybody's in their prime, either entering their prime or right in the middle of it. You have a guy in Bol Bol who's probably going to be like 23, 24 as well. So, and we're assuming he's, a solid, 12 to 15 point guy a game. Then sure, I mean, I think that would be enticing for Giannis. At the same time, though, I mean, Jokic will be in his last year of his deal.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you'd be able to re-sign him with bird rights. And I mean, that money was being taken up anyway, so you would just give him the same amount of money, essentially.
I mean, sure, I think that would, and I think, I mean,
but then you would have no depth. So now you're signing guys who just want to win a championship, veterans who just want to win a championship.
Yeah, but in this scenario, I mean, you're talking about you have 4 out of 5 guys are all-stars. So I mean,
we're playing at all-star level, yeah.
Scenario. So,
yeah. Right.
I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, if I was Giannis, would that be enticing? Yes. But at the same time, and Kennard cited this, like, he played for a small market team. Why wouldn't he want to do it again? Well, what if Giannis doesn't want to go from small market to small market? What if he wants to be like, you know what? I want to go to LA. I want to go to New York. I want to be in one of these cities. And we've seen the Nuggets get passed up time and time again. They had a great team last year, and Kevin Durant decided to go to Brooklyn. That's where he decided to go.
Yeah, that was more based off a relationship,
though.
To
go to LA and stay in LA. Anthony Davis, he wanted LA.
Right, but I think those were different situations. And for KD, that was, he's already won his championships, and he wanted to go to he's
play with his friend.
Yeah, his 2 best friends, and DeAndre Jordan and Kyrie. Mm-hmm. So that's different. LeBron wants to live in LA because it's LA, and because the next part of his career outside of basketball belongs in LA. So that was a post NBA career move for him.
For sure.
And then Anthony Davis, at the time when he wanted out, Denver wasn't that good. Right? So, or wasn't good enough to join them. Right? So, and it would have to be in a trade. Denver wasn't willing at that time to offer anything either. So I think that's just a different, right? Just different, just bad timing. It's just not the right time for Denver to make a move like that. And for Anthony Davis, you're looking at Denver, and yeah, they just got bounced in the second round by a team who got swept in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah.
So that's not enticing. But what I'm saying is, say over the next 2-3 years, or up until the 2022 NBA free agency, if Milwaukee is just like LeBron was in Cleveland, losing in the conference finals, losing badly in the NBA Finals, whatever. And there's just no way that he believes that he can win in Milwaukee. And you got a team in Denver who has made it to the conference finals in 2 straight years and just can't get over the hump to beat one of those LA teams. And let's just say those 2 LA teams don't have the money or the ability to go out and get Giannis. So, let's say Kevin Durant and Kyrie is, kicking his ass in the Eastern Conference. And that's what's happening. And so he just wants to get out of the East. He either wants to get out of the East, he wants to join a team that he knows that he can win and win instantly. And the 2 LA teams are out of the deal because they already have their superstars there. And Denver, the reason why they're able to do it is because they have young guys, and they can use restricted free agency and bird rights to their advantage. They would go over there, and it would be what Golden State did, right? Where they had the advantage of being able to draft Steph, Clay, Draymond, and be able to sign all 3 of them, and still, because of bird rights, and still be able to go out and sign a free agent like Kevin Durant. So you have to build like them. And for Golden State, I guess before they got KD, they went to 2 straight NBA Finals, right? So it's like, I don't know if making to the Western Conference Finals 2 straight years would be enough to entice Giannis, but that it would have to be a perfect storm, really.
It would, and all of this is, like I said, I've said multiple times, it's all peak scenario stuff. Everything has to go right. I mean, obviously, if we could get Giannis, hell yeah, I'll take Giannis in a heartbeat. That would be a hell of a team. Jokic, Giannis, MPJ, and Jamal Murray. I mean, I just don't know what I would do with my hands at that point. There's just be so much stuff. And knowing the Nuggets, though, they'd find a way to lose in 5 to like Utah in the second round, and I just want to go cry for an eternity. But it's a crazy scenario. Interesting. I mean, thank you, Kennard, for submitting it. I mean, it's an interesting scenario. But moving on, though, because we got to pay off the tease at some point here. LeBron, top 5 player of all time. Paul Pierce came out and listed his top 5 NBA players. And before we get to it, consider the source here, people.
It's Paul Pierce who hates LeBron.
Who hates LeBron? How many matchups did they have in the Eastern Conference? Time and time again. So just consider the source here. Also, this is the same guy who faked a knee injury because he pooped himself and he needed a wheelchair. So you cannot trust a man who faked a knee injury but really pooped himself and came back and made it some triumphant, what is it, Willis Reed type thing, like, I so much strength and resiliency, when no, had too much bean burrito Taco Bell last night and went down my shorts. No, I'm not buying that. I don't remember what his top 5 was. I believe it was Kareem, Bill Russell,
it was
Magic, I think, Michael, and I'm missing the other one.
It was 4 Lakers/Celtics and then Jordan.
Right.
So I think it was Bill Russell, Kareem, Magic, Bird, Jordan. I'm pretty sure that was the 5. Or no, it was Kobe instead of Bird. It was Kobe. Kobe was 5th on his list.
So Michael, Kareem, Bill Russell, Magic, and Kobe. Correct. Yeah. And it's not bad choices.
No, and that's the thing is,
right?
I think with anyone, we talked about it before. Like, if you take the top 7 or 8 players in NBA history, and you take whatever you want and put them into the top 5 or even top 10, guys like Kobe and Shaq and whatever. If you take 5 guys from any of the top 10 in NBA history, then you can make an argument for those top 5. You really can. Right. The only thing that is, I guess, a little crazy is leaving Jordan out of that top 5 and leaving LeBron out of the top 5. But I can see why people don't have LeBron in the top 5. I mean, it's just...
I can't.
I mean, it's
How
just...
can you not?
There's there's reasons why you can bring up. Look, he's 3-6 in the NBA Finals. Forget that he made 8 straight and whatever. They ignore that part. But he's 3-6. He collapsed against Dallas in the NBA Finals. He did have to join Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. And he when he went back to Cleveland, they did have Kyrie Irving, who was like playing at an all-star level, and they went out and signed a guy who was putting up 20 and 20 in Minnesota, and they brought him over. So he did win with other all-stars on his team. And again, I'm not saying this, but the person that is saying this also ignores the fact that Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Horace Grant, Steve Kerr, John Paxson, all those guys were on Jordan's team, and also Magic won with Kareem. I mean, they had, like James Worthy.
And here's the thing.
Too. That person saying that LeBron shouldn't be in the top 5 is also ignoring the fact that those guys were on those players' teams. So you got to remember.
If you're an objective viewer of basketball and you don't have LeBron hate, then I don't see how you can leave him off the top 5. And for everything you just mentioned, I could retort, have a comeback for that.
Right.
Okay, he's 5 in the finals. Okay, but how many times did he face a team that was better than him? Did he not take a Cleveland team on his back by himself to face prime Spurs, Hall of Famers, 4 Hall of Famers if you include Popovich as the coach? Okay, yes, he had to join Miami, and he went back to Cleveland with 2 other All-Stars. But like you just mentioned, every championship team we've seen, it wasn't just one guy pulling the ship. There was other guys.
The only black mark is Dallas.
Well, Dallas, I mean, you still had Dirk, who's an all-star level player, but you had a Hall of Famer in Jason Kidd. Okay,
but they're all at the end of their careers. They really shouldn't have won that series. They really shouldn't have.
You look at the Detroit Pistons. That was a team that, okay, you don't really have a bunch of multiple all-stars, but it's a really damn good team. But at the same time, it's like we've seen time and time again, you need good players around you to win championships. Jordan's even admitted that. So that argument to me is also bogus. And also, if you want to bring up, oh, well, he had to go to Miami. Oh, he went and teamed back up in Cleveland with Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving. Okay, take LeBron away from those 2 teams. If it's just Bosh and Wade, are they sniffing those championships? No, they're not. If it's Kyrie and Kevin Love, are they sniffing those championships going to how many they did without LeBron? No, they're not. LeBron was the best player on all of those teams,
except for that first Miami team. He was not.
He was
not
the
in
best
the NBA.
Player on that team?
Not in the NBA Finals.
But overall,
he averaged LeBron James in the NBA Finals averaged 17 points per game, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists. Meanwhile, Chris Bosh averaged 18 and Dwayne Wade averaged 26.
Yes, he had a terrible series. He didn't play the best, but was he the best player on the team? Oh, come on.
Dwayne Wade was.
Oh, come on.
Dwayne Wade was a better player in that series.
Then why the year before was Dwayne Wade getting bounced in the first round and missing playoffs after Shaq left?
The previous year, LeBron played better. In that NBA Finals, LeBron James was not LeBron James.
Right, but it doesn't mean that he wasn't the best player on the team. He may not have been playing the best.
He was the most talented. He's the most talented. But the dude shot 47% from the field and 32% from 3, and shot 60% from the free throw line. He was god awful.
If LeBron's not on that team, does Miami make it to that finals with that team and say just another productive role player?
No, because he had a great series against Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Exactly.
I'm just saying from the look, I believe that LeBron is the best player of all time. I'm just saying, so don't get me wrong. I think LeBron is the greatest of all time. So, and I'm in the massive minority of that, right? So, but in that series, he was terrible. And looking at, he averaged 17 points per game. He averaged less points than Chris Bosh, okay? And not only that, but he played 4 more minutes per game than both Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh in that series.
It was a bad series for him. I'm not denying that, but I don't think you can hold that against him, though.
I think that's the one thing that you can hold against LeBron in his career. Because he had already been to the NBA Finals before that. So it's not like it's his first year in the NBA Finals and he's freaking out. That was
So
his
one
second
bad
time in the NBA Finals.
one bad final series, and I know you're not saying this, but one bad final series takes you out of the top five. I mean, I just don't. I don't agree with that.
No, I don't
All
either.
the individual accolades, this guy's won 3 championships. You can argue if he didn't run into great three, person teams with Golden State and San Antonio. I mean, he probably has more championships, but he ran into all-time great teams with, one Hall of Fame coach on one end and Steve Kerr, who you probably could make an argument one day that he could be in the running for a Hall of Fame spot as a coach. So I mean, it's just you have to look at the whole context. Yes, he had a terrible series against Dallas, but he never ran away from that.
No.
Most guys probably would have folded. But then what did he do? He went to what, like 5, 6 more in a row with multiple
He
teams
went
and
to
won?
he went to 7 more.
That's what I'm saying.
He went to 7
We've
more.
never seen that dominance before, and that was one of Paul Pierce's things.
But it was
Like,
against a
these
weak
guys
Eastern
were
Conference. It was easy to get to the finals.
okay. Again with that though, sure, it was weak, but at the same time,
Not really. He had to
Was it- was
he had
it
to get
weak
past
or
MVP
how
Derrick
dumb?
Rose. He had to get past
Right.
the first, by the way, first big three that actually started that in the Boston Celtics. He had to
He had
get
to play
past
those
the best defensive team in the league in the Indiana Pacers, the best defensive
Right.
team in the league in Atlanta Hawks. So by the way, both teams had home court advantage.
Yeah, he had to play those early Pistons teams. It's not the Eastern Conference wasn't bad; it just wasn't deep. I think that's what we're
Right.
confusing here. It wasn't a deep conference. There
Right.
was good teams at the top.
Right. It was
which is
easy
hard
to get
have
to
a
the
deep
conference finals, but once you hit the conference finals and you had to play the Pacers, the Bulls, the Celtics,
He got through
the
'em.
Hawks at that point.
And he got through them. And it took some time, but he eventually got through. And I just don't think you can. LeBron played in the weak East. Okay, Tom Brady played in the AFC East, and that's been a terrible division, most terrible division outside
That was
of probably.
they made the
you know,
playoffs week 1
Exactly. But I'm just saying, like,
or in the offseason.
so okay, if you're gonna use that against LeBron, okay, use that against Tom Brady. The AFC always hasn't been a deep conference, so should we knock Tom Brady for that? No. Why do you think? Yes, sure, it wasn't as strong and deep, but it's hard to get past LeBron too because he's so dominant.
How about
It's
this?
just
Let's look
dumb.
at the teams that Jordan had to play in the NBA finals.
Right, and he was always favored.
They weren't that good. And yeah, exactly. He was
Jordan
always
had a tougher
favored.
time getting to the finals. It was the opposite for LeBron. It was an easy route,
Right.
not an easy, but it was easier to get to the finals, and then he had to face all-time teams.
Right. Right. And look, the only thing for me though, again, I still believe that LeBron is the greatest of all time, but the only thing that Dallas series is a bad look. And people bring up the first time he went to the NBA Finals and he got swept, but you also got to remember that was a 22-year-old LeBron James. He shouldn't have even been there. It took him
playing
scoring
prime
25
Tim
straight
Duncan.
points in fourth quarter and overtime, 25 straight points for his team to beat a Detroit Pistons team who just made it to back-to-back NBA Finals and won one of them.
He's playing prime Tim Duncan, prime Tony
And also
Parker,
that.
prime Manu Ginobili. Greg Popovich. I mean, those Spurs teams were great. We know because they kept eliminating the Nuggets all the damn time. So, I mean, come on. Give the guy... The only people that leave LeBron out of their top 5 are people that hate him because he made the move to Miami. And for some stupid reason, we're still holding that over his head. Because even if he didn't make that move, you know what we'd be saying about LeBron? Oh, well, he never won a championship.
Yeah.
That's what we'd be saying. So what do you want? Do you want the guy to do what he has to do to win a championship? Or do you want him to suffer and stay in one spot and then you knock him for not winning a championship?
Let's go through the
like
top
Damian
5.
Lillard will probably do.
I want to go through this top 5. Okay, number 1, right, for Paul Pierce was Michael Jordan, right? Well, let's see.
Fine.
Michael Jordan was drafted by the Chicago Bulls. 1, a big city. 2, at the time, no, they were a terrible team. But Jerry Krause was a GM. He went out and got and made a trade to get Scottie Pippen. He nailed it. He went out and drafted Horace Grant. He got John Paxson. He got Bill Cartwright. He got Winnington. He got those guys, and they got to the NBA Finals. And the first time in the NBA Finals for them, they went up against a LA team who, in Magic, that was his final year. At that point, that was his final year. He was in his 30s. He had already won 5 and been to 6, or no, been
Yeah.
to however many. So that was a easy, and that LA team didn't have the stars that they had 10 years ago when they were going up against Larry Bird's Celtics, right? And when they were winning championships, they were past their prime. They were done. And so that was an easy NBA Finals. If it wasn't for that first game where Jordan actually struggled because it was his first NBA Finals game, they would have swept the Lakers because the Lakers team wasn't very good. And then
they were good, but they weren't what they were.
Right. And Chicago was massively favored in that series. And they were favored in every series, I think, except for maybe one. And that was probably that final year. And even then, they were probably, I don't know. I think they were favored in every year. But they played teams that weren't all-time great teams in the NBA Finals. Even the Utah Jazz team, you had Stockton and Malone. And yeah, great players. And all-time great players. But really, it was really just them. I mean, the team was good, but
those Utah Jazz teams were winning like 60-plus games, though.
Right, but, well, yeah, but again, were they better than the Bulls?
Well, no.
No.
That's what we've touched on is that
but he got drafted into a good situation. He got drafted it turned into because he had a GM and an owner who was willing to do those things, right?
Right.
Okay, let's look at who's number 2. Kareem?
Yes.
Well, Kareem also had Magic, James Worthy. Who else? He also left Milwaukee to go to LA. Let's not forget about that. I mean, he had some all-time great players on his team.
Right.
So, okay.
Bill Russell.
Bill
Played
Russell.
on the Dynasty Celtics, but again, I mean, he's playing bankers and janitors.
Right, and also look at
guys who are
the players that were on that team too. There were some great players on that team.
And like the average height of a center, I think at that time was probably like 6'6" or 6'7".
Right.
This guy's 7 foot. Of course he's gonna dominate. I'm not trying to take away. Obviously.
And he was playing in Boston.
Right.
Again, all these players are playing in big cities. Okay. At number 5, Kobe Bryant. Well, let's see. His rookie year, he got teamed up with Shaq, and he was drafted by the Lakers.
Yeah.
He also won with Pau Gasol, Andrew Bynum, Ron Artest, Derek Fisher. Oh yeah, and by the way, he had that Phil Jackson guy who just won 6 with the Bulls.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, that's the top 5. Let's see. LeBron James, drafted by a trash organization in a trash city. No offense to people living in Cleveland.
Cleveland, please keep listening. You can't isolate the audience like that.
He was also good enough to lead the team to the playoffs to where they couldn't go out and get a. And by the way, their GM wasn't good or smart enough to go out and get him a Scottie Pippen. His second best player was Mo Williams.
Yeah, I mean, at one point it was Mo Williams, it was Antoine Jameson, who were solid players, but it's like, I mean, he's not getting teamed up with Hall of Famers here.
Right. So let's look at the difference there. There's a massive difference between being drafted in Cleveland, who there's a reason why they haven't done anything ever in their history of a franchise, except maybe they lost to Jordan in the playoffs that one year off of that shot in 85, 80. 86, whatever year that was. So, yeah, there's a massive difference between getting drafted by the Lakers or the Celtics or the Bulls and being drafted by the Cavs. There's a massive difference. And we always talk about it with players. It really does matter where you are being drafted. Like, that's important. Dwayne Wade was drafted by the Heat, who was a franchise who wanted to win, who had guys like Alonzo Mourning. They went out and traded for Shaq. They were willing to do those things to win. Why didn't Cleveland go out and trade up in the next year to try and get, because they were in the lottery that first year, they missed the playoffs. Why didn't they trade up and try and go and get Dwight Howard?
Right.
Or another top player in that draft, or the next year? Why didn't they go out and get a top free agent? Well, they got Shaq when Shaq was like 50 years old. Okay, well, congrats. Good job, whoever the GM was at that time. You know, they didn't do anything to help LeBron. But meanwhile, Jordan was able to get Pippen because his GM was great. Whatever they want to say about Jerry Krause in The Last Dance, fine. But you can't deny that he went out and got those guys in Scottie and Horace Grant. He drafted those guys, traded for those picks. He went out and signed Dennis Rodman, which was a risk at the time. But he knew that he could work there. So there's a reason why that LeBron couldn't, and the fact that they got to the NBA Finals in 2007 was a miracle on its own. Because that team, there's no way they should have made it. So there's a difference. There's a difference between where you're drafted.
And I think, listen, the debate, if you don't want to have LeBron as the greatest and you want Michael as one, fine. You know, I can't argue really much with you there.
Right.
I mean, I personally still think Michael is the greatest just because, you know, his accolades as someone who didn't really get to watch him. I mean, growing up, I mean, as he was going on that final stretch in the 90s, you know, I was, you know, anywhere from 3 to 7 years old. So, I mean, there was no way I could understand what was going on with his career and understand the context of everything. But when you look at him, you see the type of player he was, not only physically and just his talent, but he also has the career and the accolades to back it up. So fine. But to leave LeBron off of your top 5 and even your top 3 to me is just so idiotic. And the only way you can do that is if you objectively, or you're just not objective and you're just not looking at this thing objectively. That's just me. And you know, it would be hard for us to put together a top 5 because we've only been alive for the last 26 25 years here. So you know, us having the context of who should be in that top 5, I mean, if I had to do one, I'd probably go Michael, you know, LeBron. Oh God, I mean, at that point, you know, Kobe, I think, would be in there at some point. You know, would Bird be in there? I think at the end of it, I think I'd probably put Kevin Durant in there because of just the type of offensive force he
In the
is.
top 10 of all time or top
5 for me, Kevin Durant. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think I would put him in there because, I mean, yes, he had to. Now, his situation is different. I mean, he went and joined a team that didn't need him, that was winning championships without him, that, you know, stepped over him.
And he just blew a 3-1 lead to that team.
Exactly. But I think if we're looking at his talent, you've never seen a guy like, well, that's not true. There's been like the, you know, the George Gervins, I think he's been compared to and stuff like that. But someone to put it together the way he did like that, I think you'd be hard pressed not to put a guy like Kevin Durant in the top 5 all time when it's all said and done. He might not be in there now, but I think for me, it'd probably be Michael. It'd probably be LeBron. It would probably be Kobe. It'd probably be, you know, Kevin. And then at that point, I mean, if you want to do Magic, if you want to do Bird, if you want to do, you know, Shaq or whoever, Kareem, whatever, I'm fine.
Yeah, my top 5 is very different. I don't even have KD in the top 10.
Really?
Yeah, and I have my list actually somewhere, but I made it like last week when everyone was talking about it. But I have Kobe at 9 and then Shaq at 10. I know that's what rounds out my top 10. But yeah, I have LeBron, Jordan, Magic, Kareem, and Bird, I think, as my top 5. And I don't know if it's that order or not. And then let's see, I'm forgetting some players. But yeah, I think that's like within my top 5. I know Kobe and Shaq rounded out the top 10. Tim Duncan, I think I have at 8, or I might have Kobe and Tim Duncan at swapped. So I have Kobe at 8, Duncan at 9.
At the end of the day,
But yeah, that's like my top 10.
Hall of Famers and all-time great players. So
Yeah.
I mean, sure, like everybody could disagree, but I mean, can you really be, unless you're Paul Pierce and you're leaving LeBron off blatantly because you hate him and he ended your run, then okay.
I mean, let's not forget, you know, Paul Pierce didn't win until he got Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen on his team. So
and let's not act like he didn't have to have a super team to win.
Right.
Do we see the theme here in the NBA that you need great teams to win? Can we just stop like pegging LeBron as, oh, he needed great teammates, as if every other championship team didn't have great players on their team?
Let's not forget too. Let's say, I mean, things could have gone completely differently too. Let's say they would have beat Dallas. That means they would have three-peated. And in that 4th season, they would have lost to Kawhi Leonard, who was entering his prime, pretty much. I mean, he was pretty young, but he was. I mean, he won Finals MVP, and that team still had Duncan, Parker, and Ginobili.
LeBron, even though LeBron still had like 29.
But let's say they would have lost that year, so then at that point he's 3-2, right? Yep. And then the next year, say Kyrie, Kevin Love doesn't get hurt. Remember, they won Game 1, and Kyrie got hurt late in that game, and they won that game because Kyrie was playing.
Yep.
So they would have won that series if Kevin Love and Kyrie were both playing. They would have won that series.
Olynyk doesn't try and rip Kevin Love's shoulder out of his socket.
Right. So that means at that point he would have been 4-2, and then let's say 3-1 happens again, he'd be 5-2. So it's just there's been things that have happened to LeBron that are unfortunate, and he's had to play some great teams, and the Dallas one is a big one, but he couldn't control that first year in Cleveland. Kyrie and Kevin Love got hurt, but they would have won that series because that series went 6.
Yeah, the only finals you can put on LeBron is that Dallas one. And even then, I just chalked that up. It was a bad series. And, he didn't fold after that. He came back and went to multiple more finals after that and was the best player on every team since then. Right. And yes, he lost some, but he's won some, and we can't not act like he wasn't an individual dynasty in his own right in the East. And now, if it continues into the West, we'll see. But before we wrap things up, NBA eyeing a mid-July return. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, but I feel my blood pressure rising. My Nugget stress is returning. Just the thought of having to watch Mason Plumlee try and do a backwards dunk is really making me angry.
I'm terrified of the Gary Harris floaters. That's what I'm.
Oh my god!
Honestly, it's been really nice not watching them.
Yes.
Like I feel like
I needed a break.
Yeah, and I think they did too. But as a Nuggets fan, we definitely needed a break from that team.
My biggest fear right now is that Jokic is like 576 pounds, and oh god, I just pray that he ate broccoli and chicken every day of this and did not.
I don't think he has a gym though at home. We got to remember he's trapped inside. He's trapped at home. All he has is food and a TV and a couch.
Oh no, he's been watching, binge watching The Office and eating crumble cookies all day. That's what he's been doing. That's what I'm telling myself.
I've been dropping off crumble cookies for him every week. So.
That's like my dream. Just Nicole and I just eating together. That would be a dream scenario of mine. But we want to thank you for listening. Hopefully this podcast is some sort of dream scenario for you. Hopefully you got some enjoyment out of it on this sunny Friday. Again, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Shout out to everybody that streamed today and watched and commented. Anthony, I saw your slanderous comment. You better keep that off of here.
Yeah, you're not coming on the show anymore.
Jerkhole. But you can find us on Anchor, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Breaker, Overcast, Radio Public. You can follow us on Twitter for Brandon at Brandon_Stoll, for myself at Stephen Priest Jr. Thanks, guys, again so much. Oh, and shout out again to our friends in the UK and Germany. Danke fürs Zuhören. If I said that wrong, again, I'm sorry. Even, like I said earlier, even if you accidentally hit play because you meant to click the Wiener Schnitzel podcast and you got the fat thumb problem and it hit the Behind the Glass Sports podcast, hey, we hope we kept you in for a little bit and you found a new pod. But either way, anybody who's hit play, listen, stream, whatever the case is, we're doing this for fun. We're hoping you're getting some fun out of it and enjoy what we're talking about. We appreciate you guys for tuning in and listening. For Brandon Stoll, I'm Stephen Priest Jr. This has been, okay, I'm going to get it right this time as I hit my pop filter. The Behind the Glass Sports Podcast. The Behind the Glass Sports Podcast. Thanks for listening this
Success.
week, guys. Yeah, okay, come on. See, we'll see you on Monday. Have a good one.